this particular message is more like worship leader training, like I would do at Hillsong with our worship leaders. So it's a lot more practical. It's a lot more kind of targeted at kind of how we're doing things and why we're doing things. So are you guys okay with that? You guys can just be Hillsong worship leaders for an hour or so. Is that all right? Okay? Good. Okay, because we like to get to it and really kind of get to the bottom of why we do what we do. What's the purpose of it? Because like I said before, when we were doing the panel, we don't have worship leaders because we need like Christian rock stars. I don't know everybody knows that, but it's so interesting to kind of sometimes catch your perspective, catch yourself when your perspective has slipped a little bit. That kind of it's my opportunity to shine, you know, like this platform that we get to stand on. We can kind of get confused, and so I like to kind of remind our worship leaders, and we like to talk through a lot of the practical side of what's going on. So I'm going to do that. Is that all right? Okay. And if it's not all right, I've got nothing else, so I'll probably just keep doing it anyway. So think of questions, because at the end I'm going to leave time for some questions, so think of them now, because usually what happens when I say, has anybody got any questions? Nobody has any questions until there's about 2 minutes left, and then about 30 people have questions, and then we can't really. So be bold, guys, Hillsong worship leaders. Be bold, and and we'll get through this. Is that cool? All right. I want to start off. I just want to start off because, and this. I feel like this is important. I just want to read this. 2 Corinthians 12:9. You guys know it really well. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And so before we start, I want to talk about that a little bit, because so often when we read that scripture, we think about our actual weaknesses, the things that we're not very good at, the things that we actually fall short in. And so often we can be like, yeah, I'm so glad God covers those weaknesses. But in actual fact, what Paul is doing before then is he's actually going, I could talk about the things that I'm good at. I could talk about the things that I'm actually good at. I know a guy who went to the special place. He's talking about himself, for goodness sake. Anyway, he knows a guy. It's like when you blame your brother for something, you know. We did this thing called Valiant Man, and you have to kind of get, you have to kind of be transparent within the group. And my friend, he would keep going, well, this thing happened to my brother. And we soon figured out that he was talking about himself, but he was just blaming it on his brother. So I kept messaging his brother going, hey, he's saying, I shouldn't have said that. JD's saying this about you. And he's like, oh, man. So Paul's talking about himself. He could talk about the things that he's good at, but he knows that God's power, it is made perfect in weakness. So this is what I take out of it. Even the things that I think that I'm good at, even the things that I'm proficient in, even the things that I'm capable in, they are still weakness without God's power. Without God's power, they are incomplete, imperfect. And it's such a great leveler. You know what I'm saying? Because you can walk into a room and you might be a songwriter, and you walk into a room and Tim Hughes is there. And you're like, oh, well, I'm not a very good songwriter. Tim's a great songwriter. But the great thing about it is Tim's very best, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this, Tim's very best without God's power is still incomplete. It's still imperfect. So it levels us all, doesn't it? So I say that just to say, like, let's apply that thinking to what we're hearing today. Let's apply that thinking to what we can receive. A great thing about perspective steers your life. And so I like to think of my perspective as like the helm of a ship. And the thing about like an ocean liner, like a ship, a small change, maybe by 1 degree in course, over 1,000 miles, that's a massive deviation. So if you look at your perspective, how you see God, how you see people, how you see purpose, how you see your ministry, if you see your perspective as something that will steer your life, make small adjustments every day. Pick up the things that God is trying to say to you. Pick up the things that can shape you and lead you to a better place, make you more effective as a leader, make you more effective as a worshiper, make you more effective as a Christian. So I want to talk about just a few things. I'm going to get through them. So if you're taking notes, take notes. If you're not, take notes. And that's a joke my pastor always says, and he always gets the laugh, so I tried it out. What are you going to do, man? I mean, what I'll say is this isn't gospel, obviously. It's just on my iPad. But it's what we're teaching our worship leaders right now. And so, like we talked about earlier, the how, it's always subject to the why. So what we're teaching right now will definitely evolve. It will definitely develop depending on where our team is at, where our people are at, and where God is at. So I want to start with the purpose of a worship leader. We talked about it a little bit before, but we all need leadership. It's a funny thing, and I'm not talking, like the cheesy kind of leadership or like military style leadership. We all need to follow something. We all need to follow someone. It's encouraging, and like Tim said, if you're the smartest in the room, then you need to find another room. It's the same thing. We need to let that iron sharpen the iron. We need to be under submission, and that's just what honoring leadership. That's what God kind of calls us to do. We need leadership, and the purpose of a worship leader is to lead our people to the right place, lead our people into His presence, lead our people to where God is. We all need leadership. Sometimes you've got to lead yourself. Who's woken up on a Sunday morning and you're rostered onto worship lead, and you're just not feeling it? You're feeling discouraged. You're feeling dry. You're kind of hurt, discouraged, whatever. But you still got to do it, right? So sometimes you got to lead yourself. I don't feel like doing this, yet I'm still going to do it. So here we go. I have faith to believe that God can still. I have faith to believe that God can still move. I have faith to believe that He would encourage me in the midst of this situation. You lead yourself, and that's just when I started out worship leading, when I wouldn't feel it or I'm feeling a little bit sick, I'd call Ray Badham, and I'd be like, Ray, I'm sick, man. I can't be on this morning, and he'd be like, really? Really? Like the biggest passive aggressive you've ever met, right? But I'd call him up and I'd be like, Ray, I can't do it, man. And he'd be like, really? Really though? Really? Oh, you can't do it, really? And you'd be like, oh, I guess I could do it. And he'd be like, cool, man, thanks. And he'd hang up the phone. But now that I run teams, there's no one to call. I'm like, oh, I feel sick. Oh, can't call myself. So I've just got to do it. And now I'm getting the calls, and I'm like, really? Really? Ah. So thanks, Ray. Tough seasons, dry seasons, we've got to lead ourselves. Isn't that the truth? Have you ever been in that situation? Where it's not easy, but there's no option. There's nobody else. Sometimes you just got to know and remind yourself of the weight of responsibility, the privilege. Now, responsibility is not a sexy word, okay? Not allowed to say sexy, but I did. Responsibility is not it's not a word everyone's like, hey, you know what's hip? Responsibility. No one says that. You know what's really cool? Being responsible. No one says that. But sometimes establishing and reminding yourself exactly what your responsibility is, it can fill you with so much purpose. I know for me, I know that people are coming in to church. And like I said, you have no idea what state people are coming into church. And they, they might be hurting, they've got pressure, they're facing all of this stuff, and they're coming in and they are hoping for something. I refuse to believe that people come to church out of just purely out of routine or duty. I have to believe that people come to church because they are searching for a connection, something special, and they want to be encouraged. They want to be filled with vision. They want to be filled with purpose. They want community. They don't come just to tick a box. I mean, you might think that. I mean, especially at our 8 a.m. service in Sydney, it's the early morning service. People pull up to church with boats attached to their cars. I know what they're doing. They're getting a little bit of church, then they're going fishing, straight up. I'm like, well, good on you, man. At least you're coming to church and you're not just going fishing. So I refuse to believe that people when they come to church, they're just fulfilling an obligation or ticking a box. So then I understand that my job as a worship leader, the purpose of this kind of role is 100% to help people find God, help people find that presence, help people get to a place where they feel safe enough to surrender in God's presence. Is that good? One question: who is the worship leader? The person with the microphone is the worship leader. But what we've been teaching lately is it doesn't matter if you have a microphone or a keyboard or a bass guitar or drums, or you're on the front of house console, or you're doing the words for the screens. Do you know how much I think the graphics person leads the church far more than anyone with a microphone, don't you? Because if they put up the wrong words, everyone's like, ooh. And you're just going, you guys get what I'm saying. I'm at a conference and they put up the wrong words, and I know that no one's heard the song. Well, not many people have heard the song. So I go with what the words say, and then I realize that if I keep singing this, it's not going to line up with the melody. We're in trouble. So it kind of all goes bad, and then my pastor walks up in front of 20,000 people and goes, so you messed up, did you? And I just had to cop it, even though it wasn't my fault. Proof that the graphics operator is just as much a worship leader as anybody with a microphone. Front of house. You understand, if the sound guy goes, hey man, instead of doing church, I'm going to go and catch a late breakfast, so good luck. If he does that, your job's going to become a lot harder. You know what I'm saying? So we started to view everybody, Serge on the door, Pastor Serge, ex-KGB like spy. He stands on the door and people come into church and he goes, morning champion, oh, good to see you. And because he's so Australian, even though he's Russian. And and he's like, morning champion, and he makes people feel welcome. Then people come in and they're greeted by a host who shows them to a seat. Then they see the worship leader who says, good morning, church. Every one of those people just contributed to the fact that what we're trying to do is help people to feel safe enough to surrender to God. Help people to feel welcome enough that this could be a place where they can let their guard down, where they maybe would dare to be vulnerable in front of God. So we're all worship leaders, every one of us, even the production guys, even though they wear all black. Sometimes there's like crack going on and all that. I know. We've got hey, I'm from Australia, so you can edit the thing, but I'm not going to get in any trouble for saying that. So, but everybody's a worship leader, everybody. But the beauty of that is when we all see it, we can all start to carry some of that load. We all start to contribute to that point. So, because the last thing I need is a drummer who just plays the drums. The last thing I need is a guitar player who plays the parts perfectly, but is completely disengaged from what else is going on in the room. I want people to be thinking about ministering. I want people to be thinking about this vertical and this horizontal. Because we want to serve people. This platform isn't for stardom, it's for service. So I want this entire band, I want the entire team, from the person who chases the cameraman around holding the cables, I want them all to see their job as a significant part in somebody's journey for that particular service, in meeting with God. We all need to carry the weight of ministry. My third point, know who you're leading. Know who you're leading. Know your people. Know your people. Like I said, that 8 a.m. service, they're usually the ones who don't like the rock and roll. They're usually the ones that don't like subs and crazy lights and loud music. They like hymns, and they like, that's okay. It's actually okay. So we have a building that we call, that's a chapel. We built it, and it's sandstone and glass and wooden floors, and we made it feel like a chapel. And we actually changed all of our arrangements. So we take all of our songs and we workshop them so that, like, acoustic guitar, grand piano, and like a percussion type setup, maybe some strings if there's any available, and we can go in and lead the service like that. And we actually design the service around that, so there's an alternative for those who want to sing hymns, for those who want to, who don't like big loud music and crazy lights. There's actually a place for them to go. So we know that's the case, so that's how we lead. And I actually love going down there and leading, because they're the people who want to hear themselves sing. So in the arena, it's crazy. That's where the lady is, with the voice, the massive voice, who stands behind the preacher and sings right at the back of his head. That's where that lady loves to go, because she can sing as loud as she wants, and it actually sounds awesome because it's sandstone and glass, and we change our arrangements to kind of suit the fact that when you give them room to sing, they sing loud, and it's great, it complements. So you learn to know your people. You learn to kind of figure out that you can cater to kind of the needs of people. We talked about opinion before, and opinion's great, but needs are more important. And so we need to kind of be aware of these things. Be aware of what people could be carrying. Like I said before, you just don't know what people are coming in with. On a Sunday night at Hillsong, we have a lot of youth. We have a lot. It just goes crazy, And a lot of our young worship leaders, they think they've made it when they lead on a Sunday night. They just think it's like, man, I led Sunday nights. It's a big deal, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I mean, I think like a toddler could walk out on a Sunday night with one of those noisemaker things, and just swing it around, and then they'll just worship. It's not like a big deal. It's not hard, because it's a full room, and there's excitement, there's anticipation, there's expectancy for God to move. So I think that's the easiest job out of any of them across the week. What you should really do is lead our 9 a.m. service. The room's half full. Everybody's a bit kind of chilled out. They come in during maybe the second song. It's a service that actually requires a bit of leadership, So you begin to learn, and you begin to adjust, and nothing is ever kind of executed the same way. We have to have an awareness of what's going on with our people. Take the events that happened last week in Paris, and I think I talked about this earlier, but what we did do was we were aware that people are going to come in a little bit confused, a little bit kind of rattled. Same thing with the GFC a few years ago. People losing their businesses, people kind of losing hope for the purpose they believe God had put in their lives, and they were discouraged. People were hurting. And so we were just like, you know what? Our people they just need encouraging. They need to remember about the sovereignty of God. They need to remember that our trust is in God. They need to remember that when we magnify Him, then He becomes bigger than our problems in our own sight. And so we kind of make adjustments like that all the time. My pastor says lead the back row. So on a Sunday night when it's pumpy and the first 4 rows are like all teenagers going crazy, don't get carried away with that, because that's great. That's exciting. They're going to do that all the time. What you want to make sure is that you don't leave the mums and dads and the grandparents and the singles and the young adults who are sitting beyond those first 4 rows and all the way up to the back row. You want to make sure you don't leave them behind. So you can get so excited and go crazy, and then everyone's like, this mustn't be for me, because it's a bit too crazy, you know. And so if we have a thought, if we're always thinking about who we're leading, it can really kind of empower us to actually lead them. Do you like that? Okay, set an expectation. Set an expectation. I used to kind of go into leading worship with the old, man, I hope people come ready to worship. I hope people come ready to kind of connect with God. I hope people, but I don't think that anymore. I realize that if I'm a worship leader, then it is my job for people to make sure that people are freed up of all distraction and given every opportunity to connect with God. That's my job. So my new expectation is this. Nobody misses out on the presence of God, not one person. And it sounds arrogant, I know. Sounds very arrogant. But here's the deal, I don't care. I don't. Because if my job is to lead people in worship, if my job is to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to connect with God, then I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it, man. And I will use dirty tricks. I will trick people. I will. I'll make sure the snare's turned up loud enough so people know when to clap. I'm telling you. I'll make sure the snare's turned up. I'll make sure that the mix is kind of, it helps. The right things are poking out, you know? And if I can get a foot tapping, my theory is maybe I can get a hand clapping. If I can get a hand clapping, maybe they'll sing a line of a song. And there's a reason why Tim talks about writing songs and keeping close to the Bible. It's because when we sing songs that are written from the Bible, all of a sudden we are confessing Scripture together. And where 2 or more are gathered in agreement, He is in their midst. Boom, I just tricked you. I promise you, I want people to connect with God. Here's the deal. There's this guitar player in our team. He's a tiny little redhead, quite a broad character. And he plays guitar in our team, and he's got tattoos everywhere, but he's also got a master's in theology. So every time we go away, every time we travel, we tour, I kind of ask him to put together some little 5-minute devotionals so that we can do it as a team, every night. And he did this one that stuck in my mind so much. And it basically was that the gospel, the truth that we know, think about it as unfathomable riches. And those who do not know, we are indebted to them. We are actually indebted to those who do not know the message of the gospel. Doesn't that freak you out? I feel like this punch isn't landing at all. But do you get what I'm saying? So what we know and what we value and what we know to be so powerful and so life-giving, those who don't know it, we are in their debt. We owe them this truth. So I like to think of the presence of God like that. Someone walks into a service and I'm like, you know what? I know what you need. Presence of God. I know what you need. Presence of God. Presence of God for you too. Presence of God for you. That's the answer for me. I'm just like, hey, my job is not to preach. We got a preacher coming a bit later on, in the service, and he's better than I am. So I'm just going to let him do it or her do it. And you got a new prime minister. I don't know what the deal is. Just making sure. But I I want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity, and I see the presence of God. Because here's the deal, no songs don't change people's lives. Melodies don't, guitar parts don't, no matter how well they're played, no matter how well a song is sung, no matter how well a song is written, that will not change anybody's life. Only the presence of God, only the power of God, and only His truth that will set them free. So that's where we're headed. Every time I'll get this microphone, that's where we're headed. And I don't make any kind of excuse or apology for it. But set an expectation. It's easy to put yourself at the mercy of the atmosphere or the kind of the temperature of the congregation. I remember when I was a young guy in New Zealand, maybe 16, 17, worship leading in church, and our church was in an old grain store. Basically just an old warehouse where they put drywall up, and then now it's a church. So, and it was freezing cold. In New Zealand, it doesn't get quite as cold as here, but it still gets pretty cold. And so in the mornings, people would come in with their coats on, and they just wouldn't take them off because it was just basically an old tin warehouse with drywall, so it was freezing cold. And I remember leading worship and getting so annoyed because people were just like this. And I'm like, oh, come on. But they're cold, and it's just where they're at. So one Sunday I kind of got annoyed about that. You can tell I'm not a very patient guy, right? So one Sunday I got really annoyed, and have you guys ever heard of a song called The Hokey Pokey? I made them do it. Just pretend you're the band. I was like, you put your left leg in, your left leg out, do it. And I'm looking at the band like, you better do it, and the band are like, So they did it. Church is looking at me like, what is this? And they're kind of like, senior pastor's looking at me like, enjoy this, man. This is your last time ever, So anyway, we get to left leg, right leg. We get to left arm in, and the church is going, he's not going to stop, is he? He's not stopping. And there's a long way to go. He's not going to stop. And they're looking at each other, smiling. They're kind of like, I'll tell you what, by the time we got to whole self in, the whole church was doing it. They were laughing their heads off. They just kind of let go of all these kind of inhibitions. And you guys have heard, when you have Connect Group and you have icebreakers? Well, this was the ultimate icebreaker. This was an ice crusher. And so, but basically, that's what it's all about. And then we went into a time of worship like we'd never had before. And it wasn't about the song. It was actually about what they needed to overcome to get to God. There was this little flesh boundary locking them up. And it wasn't just the cold, it was what they were used to. It was their norm. But I had no patience, and I still kind of don't. So I was just like, well, we're changing that. That's not happening. Afterwards, senior pastor's like, whoa, you're lucky. You're lucky that worked. You're lucky that worked. And I was like, yeah. And I am not saying you guys should go back on Sunday and do that. But if you do, don't tell them that I told you to do it. You see, comfort is the opposite of sacrifice. It's the antithesis of sacrifice. But so often sacrifice is what's needed for God to actually move in our lives, for God to actually meet us where we're at. They that wait on the Lord will renew their strength. You know that? It's not talking about waiting on God like you're waiting at a bus stop. It's talking about waiting on God like He's at a table and you're the waiter. Do you get what I'm saying? So without sacrifice, He's bound. He can't. We have to run to Him. It's important to be open-minded. but also know what your responsibility is. So I'll leave it there. But I will say this. No one makes all the effort to get to church. No one gets up in the morning, gets the kids ready, breakfast, gets through traffic, finds a parking spot, gets into church. No one does all of that in the hope of having a bad time. Nobody. Think about it. Because so often we can get up on the stage and think, man, here we go again. Like it's a hostile environment. Like we have to get out there and impress them, or like we have to get out there and, I don't know. But let me tell you this, no one comes to church hoping that the preacher is a bad speaker. No one comes to church hoping that the worship leader is a bad singer, or no one comes to church hoping that the band hasn't rehearsed, or that they would be discouraged. Can you imagine that? Coming to church to be discouraged. No, people come to church to be encouraged. They come to church to be filled with purpose. They come to church to be lifted up. Doesn't that take a lot of pressure off? It's not a hostile environment. Actually, they're hoping that you're a great singer. They're hoping that the preacher does a great job. They're hoping that God would meet them where they're at. But sometimes they just don't know how to get over that little bit of flesh, that little bit of familiarity. That's your job. Sorry, man, that's just your job. All right, next one. Have a plan. Have a plan and share it. Hey, is Peter still here? I just don't know when I need to finish. Okay, cool. Have a plan and share it. I like to, before we start rehearsing, I like to pull all the band and all the production and anybody who really wants to come. If a guy on the street wants to come, whatever, I don't care. But I get them all together and I tell them what my intentions are, what my plan is. Because I don't want it to just be my thing. If it's my thing, no one else will want to carry it with me. If it's my thing and it's, look, this is what I'm doing, this is my ministry, no one else will want to carry it with us. Just a reminder, it's his ministry. We get to be a part of it. So have a plan. Share it. Be open to kind of working together. When I make a plan, I start with the last song. I know where I want to finish. I know where I want to end up, and then I'll go back and I'll plan exactly how we're going to get there. So I think I talked about it earlier, but sometimes we have a song called Open Heaven, and the bridge goes, "Oh Holy Spirit, burn like a fire, consume me, consume me." Now, that sounds painful to me, getting burned and stuff, you know? So sometimes people, when we go and sing a song like that, petition, you know, a song that takes a lot of faith, sometimes when we sing a song like that cold, people are like, ooh, I don't think I want to sing that song. And so they're kind of like, But I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe we could make a plan. Maybe we could sing a song before that song that absolutely magnifies God. And in the process, we humble ourselves. And in the process, we get a perspective on where he sits and where we sit. And in the process, we get a perspective on who he is and who we are. So then when it comes time to sing a song like, "Oh Holy Spirit, burn like a fire," the refining process of his Holy Spirit, we are filled with faith. We actually trust God more because we just spent 5 minutes magnifying him. Sometimes the song list can be a lot more intentional than we think. There was another song called Jesus, and the bridge went, "Jesus, Jesus, all I want is to be like you." And I would watch people not sing it because they would be questioning in their heads, wait a minute, I don't think that's all I want. I'm pretty sure I want a jet ski as well. No, that's just me. But you would watch people process it, you know? And I would be like, wait a minute, what is going on here? and I'll be reading, and I'll be trying to figure out what's going on. And I realized that we can so often kind of do a disservice to our people by not kind of framing these thoughts well enough. And I like we're getting into kind of, people can speculate, but I truly believe that so often when it comes to kind of making that kind of a statement, I tend to read about God to build my faith. I tend to praise Him to build my faith. Then all of a sudden, I'm reminded of the bigness of God and the power and sovereignty of who He is. You guys get what I'm saying? Identify distractions. Like we talked about with the cold, the weather, current events, with what happened in Paris, the GFC. Have an awareness of what's happening spiritually. I like to think that sometimes, you can feel kind of something that's going on. Maybe you feel like people are discouraged. Maybe you feel like people are whatever. And the way I deal with it is whatever I feel like the distraction is, I head first straight into it with the truth of God, with the truth of His Word. And I don't know how else to do it. I just know that if you kind of ignore it, it doesn't go away. You know what I'm saying. The next one, know how to interact with your people. You know how you interact with your friends? You kind of like, hey guys, what's up? High five or whatever. You don't walk into a room full of your friends and you do not speak in the King's English. Or, or you don't get all Christianese on them. You don't, right? Was Christianese, anyone offended by me using the word Christianese? Just making sure. Well, you don't, right? You walk into a room full of your friends and you're just yourself. You're genuine. You don't put on this holy facade. I'm a worship leader. And your language doesn't get weird. You guys get what I'm saying, right? What language do you use? Why do you ask them to lift their hands? They're smarter than you think, They are. They are, because we have some young guys in our church, and they'll be like, lift your hands, and then they'll talk about something, and then a guy next to me will go, why did we lift our hands again? And I'll be like, I know what I'm training on next week. Make sure everything has a purpose. So if you're getting people to lift their hands just because you want to focus them all, it's fine, it's great, but give them something to teach them something along the way. Lifting your hands is just an outward sign of inward surrender to God. And this morning we surrender to you, Jesus. It's something practical to go along with kind of how you're interacting with people. Remember this, humility. A humble approach will disarm the skeptic. So if we walk out onto the platform and we've got our chests out and we've kind of got our swagger going and we're trying to show everybody what we got, I guarantee you'll put people off because they'll be able to pick it up. But if it's obvious that you're there to serve, if it's obvious that you are there to help them get to where they need to get, it actually disarms that hard spirit. It really does. And we tell a lot of our younger worship leaders with not a lot of authority, not a lot of credibility yet, to use invitational prompting. Instead of lift your hands and sing, it's would you lift your hands? Would you sing? Smile. Watch the anger passion. You know the anger passion? Because we think we're just so like spiritual and crazy, but we're going crazy and we look angry, and then the church is just like, who's the angry guy yelling at us? And I'm guilty of it, man. Oh yeah, God, and I'm having a great time, and everyone else is like, who is this kid? You know what I'm saying? Watch the anger passion. An invitational approach. Speak slowly. And if you have a really high voice, try and bring it down a little bit. Because a PA system is not kind to somebody with a high voice. I'm just stating the facts. Nothing about high voices. I'm just saying. that if you want people to hear what you say, understand what you say, then speak slowly and try and bring it down a little bit. Not so that you're, because when I was growing up, third day, was like a big deal, and everyone was trying to sing like Mac Powell. But there's only one Mac Powell, and I wasn't from Georgia. I was from New Zealand, so I didn't sound like him at all. But I was still going, yes, oh God, But only he can do him, And so when we try and come off as something that we're not, it's people see through that as well. We got to be careful. If you engage with your people, if you speak to your people in a service, if you need to, have a plan. Have a plan. You don't have to stick to the plan. It just means that you have something to go on. These are the rules. These are the rules in our church, because I'm not going to put these on you, but I'm just going to tell you what the rules are in our church. If you're going to speak to the congregation, short, Bible, and encouraging. So your personal revelation is great. It's amazing. And I'm glad that God speaks to you, but we don't need our worship leaders to bring their personal revelation from in between song 2 and 3. Because here's the truth. If I'm 35 years old, so whatever God told me this morning took me 35 years to kind of come across. You get what I'm saying? So it'd be a bit of a tall order for us to expect our congregations to hear what your revelation is, process what your revelation is, and then decide whether or not they agree with it. Wouldn't it be a whole lot easier if what we said was based in the Word? In Psalm 100 it says, enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. So this morning, we honor you, God. We bring thanksgiving and praise. Amen. They already know it's Bible. So they go, Bible, I agree with that. They don't have to process it. They do, man. I'm being serious. But if we go on about this deep kind of revelation, they're going, wait, so you're talking about the angel with the 6 wings? You've already lost them. But if you use Bible truth, they immediately go, that's Bible. I agree with that. All of a sudden, we are gathered in agreement. Bible says when 2 or more are gathered in agreement in his name, he is in their midst. Sucked in, I got you again. Be very intentional about what you say. I'm not saying we have to be robots, but what I'm saying is that if the objective is to lead people into his presence, I don't want to distract people with a left of center thought that they have to process. I want them to quickly and easily kind of go, yes, I'm on board with that. That's where God is. I want to go there. And that's kind of the thing that I reckon if you're going to interact with or talk to the congregation in a worship service, just be very intentional. Use the Bible. It doesn't have to be read an entire chapter, but it can be. But what I'm saying is, keep it simple, keep it short, and keep it Bible. Good? Okay, the last one. Genuine and authentic worship leading. You don't need to strive, get bossy, intense, super spiritual, speak in the King's English, watch the anger passion, what we talked about. Know this. If you love the people that you're leading, you're going to lead them to the right place. If you love those that you're leading, if you love your church, if you love your youth ministry, if you actually care about them and the state of their hearts, you're going to lead them to the right place. And that is where God is. That is where his presence, like nothing else that anyone's ever experienced, and no one is ever the same after encountering his presence. That's where you're going to lead them because you love them. So people ask all the time, hey, how do you be an authentic worship leader? Like, I don't know. I don't know. All I know is if I love my people, I'm going to do what's right for them. I'm going to lead them to the right place. I'm going to make sure that this isn't about me. I'm going to make sure that they know that when I'm worship leading, that maybe perhaps I'm going to lead them to the right place. And I pray that's the case. And I pray that's the case for you guys.